Friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. Roger had never felt so alone in his life. Yes, he was celebrating Christmas with his family, but he was still alone. His parents were with each other, and his three siblings had spouses and children of their own. But for the first time in 12 years, Roger was alone. He divorced his wife, with whom he had lived for 11 years, just 2 months ago, and now, on this holiday, which has always been dedicated to the family, he was alone. God bless his mother, 2 sisters, and a brother. They tried their best to make Roger feel loved and lost. Everyone in the house thought so, except his father. Emotionality was not his thing. He tried to keep his cool, slapping Roger on the shoulder as the only sign of emotion. Roger knew that this was his best version of fatherly love, and it was just as effective as the attention from all the other organs of the family. You can really feel lonely in a crowd, Roger thought to himself. The family opened a lot of presents under the tree. Everyone oohed and awed, laughed and teased each other, as only a family can do. Roger tried his best to pretend that he liked it. He didn't want to spoil this moment for anyone, especially his 7 nieces and nephews. Christmas is a holiday for children. But Uncle Roger was not going to participate in this fun. He couldn't help but think about the only gift that wasn't under the tree, a 1.25-carat gold diamond necklace. He wasn't under the tree because they weren't going to give him away. About a month after Christmas, this January, he will receive a refund of a large amount of money for this necklace. It was intended for his then-wife Tracy, who was the love of his life back in January. It was only in February that he found out that she had been cheating on him for 6 months, and 2 weeks later he hit her with divorce papers. At the same time, he thought about giving the necklace back with a full refund, but he just couldn't bring himself to even look at it. Roger loved this woman with all his heart, with all his soul, and he was absolutely sure that they would be together for a long time. He had already guessed that there were no blind people in the world more than those who could not see. "Call me Stevie Wonder," he thought to himself. Roger noticed that the couple's love life had slowed down somewhat about 6 months before this accident, but he told himself that it was because he and Tracy had been married for more than 10 years, and this was kind of normal. What he didn't notice: his wife secretly read her messages and never let the phone out of her hands. He trusted her completely and never, even in the darkest of assumptions, did he think that she would betray his trust. Of course, even in his wildest dreams, Roger did not expect that someone not from his family would pronounce his last name correctly, and, when it happened, he just had to stop and talk to the man who had just done the impossible. One Thursday, around lunchtime, a supplier of the first level of importance for their company came to him without warning, and Roger decided to impress him with a great dinner. He took him to the best barbecue spot in town, on the other side of town, about a 35-minute drive from the office. Roger probably only ate there 3 times in the last 11 years, but John Steiner deserved the best. When it was time to pay, Roger attached his credit card to the bill, and when the waitress returned, she thanked him by calling him by his last name. And that's right. As with many other Polish names and surnames, the spelling has nothing to do with pronunciation, so when she pronounced Hiwarat as Zikwat, Roger almost fell off his chair. He and John exchanged shocked glances. "How do you know how to pronounce it?" he asked the waitress, who seemed to be of Asian descent. "You don't look like a Polka at all. When you see that name 2 days in a row, you immediately remember it," she laughed. "Apparently, I served a couple of your relatives at lunch yesterday, and I just needed to ask how to pronounce this name. Is Tracy Zikuat a relative of yours?" I didn't catch her husband's last name, although he was a Krasavchik. They were a very cute couple. John knew that the waitress was referring to Roger's wife, and Roger blushed like a brake light, but restrained himself. "Yes, she's the organ of the family," he said. "She and that handsome husband of hers get a little carried away sometimes, don't they?" "You could say that. Sometimes I felt like I was interrupting a couple of horny teenagers. I hope I'll look as good as this woman when I'm over 30. Tracy was actually 37, but with her bouncy body with an abundance of curves, along with flawless porcelain skin and long dark brown hair, she could have passed for 20 years old. Roger guessed that the Krasavchik, Mr. Hiwashrat, was actually Joey Brilliant, a salesman from Tracy's firm. He had been diving in college less than 10 years ago, and looked like a young Jason Statham, only with a full head of hair. Tracy had been working at the same insurance agency in administrative positions since about the time she and Roger got married. Statham's doppelganger had appeared in the office about a year ago, and Roger had heard about him almost every night after work for about 6 months. And then Tracy suddenly stopped talking about him, as if he didn't even exist anymore. Perhaps this was another clue that Roger, Mr. Trust, had missed. John and Roger drove back to the office in complete silence. Roger wasted no time in hiring a private investigator. The investigator collected evidence over 2 weeks, including a video showing the lovers making love in their marital bed on Wednesday morning for an hour after Roger left for work. The investigator warned Roger that the video was obscene, but Roger, of course, was not even remotely prepared for such disrespect. "That bastard," Roger shouted, looking at the computer screen as he watched what was happening on the screen in the privacy of his office after work. Roger did not waste time and instructed his lawyer to draw up the divorce papers. A week later, Tracy was serviced at work. After watching a video of his wife and lover making love in his marital bed, Roger had no problem embarrassing Tracy in front of her colleagues. Roger returned home early that evening when Tracy drove the car into the garage. She practically ran into the house and started yelling at her husband. "What the hell are you doing, embarrassing me in front of my friends and colleagues? And my boss, for God's sake," she screamed. Roger was leaning back in his chair, sipping La Zeta Boy bourbon, and the bottle was on the table next to his chair. He calmly finished his drink and put down the glass. "Because I wanted you to get a little taste of what I felt when I watched you and Joey Brilliant making love in our marital bed. You bastard. At least you could tell me that our marriage is over. You didn't have to desecrate our marital bed. And, damn it, don't you think I at least deserve some kind of apology?" Roger refilled his glass, and Tracy stared at him. It had just occurred to her to ask how long Roger had known and how he knew. "At least tell me what I did wrong and how long it's been going on," he said. "Oh, and also, is this guy the only one you're fucking?" "Don't be so rude, Roger," Tracy snorted. "We've been making love for about 6 months now, and Joey is the only one. It just happened that way. You didn't do anything wrong. It just happened that way." Tracy's eyes filled with tears. "What the fuck is she crying for?" thought Roger to himself. "She was the one who cheated. She's not the one who was cheated on. So you're saying that one day Joey, passing by you in the office, slipped on a banana peel and his organ hit you? Okay, that sounds plausible. We had a good talk." Tracy stared at her husband with her mouth open as he poured himself another drink and sipped calmly. For some reason, it never occurred to her that her husband would find out about her affair, and if he did, he would react this way. It suddenly occurred to her that she had taken advantage of her husband's love terribly unceremoniously. Roger's family was as devastated as he was when they found out about Tracy's betrayal. After all, the couple had been together for 12 years, married for 11, and practically seemed like the perfect couple. The only thing missing from this perfect marriage was children. Although they originally wanted 2 kids when they planned their lives, Tracy continued to put it off until one day Roger lost his temper and asked her if she was violating their agreement. Tracy tearfully admitted that it was true, and no argument with Roger could make her change her mind. It was a stressful few months for them, until Roger finally told Tracy that he would let her have her own way. Mary Hewson looked sadly at her husband, with whom they had lived together for more than 33 years. Last Christmas, with its warmth and fun, seemed so far away, she thought. This Christmas, with the recent divorce of their eldest daughter, Tracy, seemed almost ghostly. Yes, the house was full. Her second daughter had a family of 6, but Tracy seemed to be walking in a bad dream without Roger. Besides, Roger was always the soul of the party when families got together. Although he and Tracy had no children, he loved his 4 nieces and nephews and was always on the same page with them. Mary and George Hewson, for their part, adored their former son-in-law, and Tracy's meager attempts to explain the demise of their marriage never seemed adequate enough to them. Roger told his mother-in-law that Tracy had actually made the decision to divorce, and he would no longer discuss it. Tracy felt the tension of the whole family when they spent a few days together before and after Christmas. She thought that staying with her family would help her overcome the malaise she felt inside, but it turned out that it had the opposite effect. Everyone seemed to be waiting for a better explanation of why she and Roger had divorced. And it seems that her sister's children and brother-in-law blamed her for the fact that Uncle Roger was not around. The Hewsons did not invite Joey to the family Christmas, and Tracy did not fight for his participation in this event. She would miss his lean, muscular body next to her in bed at night. But this way she wouldn't have to deal with the awkwardness of being an outsider. Realizing that it had been only 2 months since the official divorce, Joey did not particularly resist when Tracy told him that she was going to her parents for the holidays without him. She was stunned when one afternoon at the end of February, she was handed the divorce papers at her place of work. She had no idea that Roger knew about her affair. She was so engrossed in her personal life that she was completely unprepared to be served. The embarrassment was so terrible, and she was pretty sure she saw Joey's smirk in the background when it happened. She arrived home in a rage, but that anger turned to confusion when she ran into Roger. He was quiet and calm and seemed more interested in his bourbon than arguing with her. Besides, she knew that she really didn't have good answers to his questions. He seemed to know a lot about the case, including that he and Joey had a date right in their bedroom. When Roger mentioned it, she even thought it sounded tasteless. She told Roger the truth when she said she didn't want this to happen. Almost all the women in her office fainted when Joey came to work for them. His looks and charm quickly won over most of them. Tracy noted that the young man was very adept at flirting and seemed to be very good at the game of seduction. She didn't seem too concerned when Joey started chatting with her, fully believing that she was immune to Joey's advances as she loved her husband. A casual lunch turned into a casual dinner, as Tracy told her husband several times that she had to work late. She admitted to herself that she liked Joey's company, and he was certainly handsome. After the 5th dinner, the couple ended up in a hotel room, and Tracy was only worried for a minute before she was under Joey. He easily slipped into her. The young man slowly took Tracy for a few minutes before turning her around and taking her doggy style again. His strong hands held her hips tightly, and he began stroking her. The flutter in Tracy's lower abdomen turned into an itch. "Ai!" Tracy screamed as she was struck by her best finish in this eye-catching session. She tensed and then shuddered while on top of Joey, causing the young man to spray almost a bucket inside her. Tracy knew it wouldn't be the only act for the two of them. Tracy was somewhat surprised that she wasn't overwhelmed with guilt at all when the two of them washed and dressed. Physically, she felt fine and didn't worry too much about her husband. Completely happy with her young stallion, Tracy practically gave up love with Roger. Joey's youthful enthusiasm, his overall strength and loving stamina, combined with the illegal nature of what they were doing, kept Tracy in a heated state, and she was ready to make love at any time as long as this young man desired. Then they hugged, talked, and laughed. It may not have been intentional, but Tracy got closer to Joey the longer they were together. Since Roger always trusted Tracy and gave her free rein, she didn't feel any pressure in her relationship with Joey. They were never outspoken in public and were always careful with their dates, except when they sometimes used the marital bed, at Joey's request. The young man found it exceptionally exciting to fuck Tracy in her marital bed, and being sure that they would not be caught, Tracy had to admit that she found it exciting too. As soon as Tracy got used to being in the process of divorce, she and Joey began to spend more time together, and not only in a loving way. She found peace and security in his strong arms, as she had once found in Roger's arms. She had to admit that she was surprised at how easily she could forget her husband. Joey Brilliant missed Tracy when she went to her parents for Christmas. The couple began their romance more than a year ago and became especially close when Tracy's husband, Roger, filed for divorce in February. The divorce became official in October, and Joey and Tracy were thinking about moving in together. They talked about Joey accompanying Tracy to her parents, but Tracy decided to go to them alone after her mother told her that her lover was not invited and he was not welcome. Actually, Joey was fine with it because he wanted to spend some time partying with his friends, and that probably wouldn't happen if Tracy was around. To be honest with himself, Joey hadn't planned on being with Tracy for so long, but he had to admit that she was a beautiful woman and a damn good partner. When he first met her at the insurance company, he knew she was married, but he hadn't cared before. He seduced several married women. He just wasn't planning anything long-term. The plan changed when Tracy's uninformed husband apparently stopped being ignorant about 6 months after their affair began and filed for divorce. Joey couldn't believe that Roger had, in fact, just dumped his wife without getting into a fight. Joey couldn't figure out if Roger was stupid or spineless, but discussing the matter with Tracy didn't get him any closer to an answer. The dance was in full swing, and the night before Christmas Eve the party was good. Joey left his friends around 1 o'clock in the morning, accompanied by a pretty blonde who had been drinking with Joey and his friends for several hours. "This damn guy is so good. Looking that women just can't get away from him," one of Joe's friends told another. "But I bet this girl is half the age of his usual partner." Both men chuckled as they took another drink at the bar. It had been almost 5 years since Roger had last seen Marie Hewson. He always liked Mary and George. They had been very kind to him all these years and had nothing to do with what their daughter had done. Roger still sent birthday and Christmas cards. When Roger entered the Italian restaurant, Marie was already sitting at a table. Although she and George lived an hour's drive south, she asked Roger to meet her at one of his favorite restaurants near the apartment he moved into after his divorce from her daughter. Marie's eyes watered at the thought of divorce. Roger was a great guy, and even now she couldn't understand why Tracy would do this to him. They hugged as Roger approached the table. "It's been too long, Roger," Marie said. "George and I and the rest of the family have missed you. We love you, Roger, and nothing Tracy has done will change that." "And I still love all of you guys," Roger replied. "I'm sorry that I haven't seen you for so long. We understand everything, son. It's all good. But I have a selfish reason for wanting to see you. Do you remember Tracy's cousin, Bunny, the youngest of her bridesmaids, who joined the Air Force shortly after the wedding? Well, she's returned to civilian life and just got a job at an aerospace firm in your city. I was hoping that you could show her around the city, introduce her to the right people, and maybe just point her in the right direction. To be honest, I'm not asking for anything more." Roger smiled wryly at his former mother-in-law. She feigned surprise. "It was a request either to you or to my daughter, but right now, neither George nor I feel much pleasure in how Tracy leads her own life, let alone helping someone start a new one." Roger nodded in agreement. Enough has been said, he thought. A few days later, Roger called Bunny and invited her to lunch at the same restaurant where he met Marie. He really didn't know who to look for, because the last time he saw her, she was a thin, blonde, freckled 19-year-old girl preparing to join the Air Force. She was 36 years old now. The only hint Marie gave him was that Bunny no longer had freckles and her hair had darkened. Roger waited attentively while the waiters escorted the 3 lonely brown-haired girls to other tables. The 4th brown-haired woman turned out to be Bunny. Roger was more than surprised. She was of average height and was well built from top to bottom. Roger thought that the time spent in the service had undoubtedly enriched the woman physically, and her sparkling blue eyes would make her a favorite of single men all over the city. Roger decided that lunch had gone well. Bunny turned out to be very smart and was more than capable of keeping up an interesting conversation. Roger reminded himself to call Mary and thank her for putting him in touch with Bunny. Roger enjoyed her company so much that he invited her to lunch again, and then to dinner and a concert. He definitely needed to thank Marie. Tracy was sitting at a restaurant table, waiting for her date. At 43, she was still a beautiful woman with a thick, curvy body thanks to regular visits to the gym. Her companion was a 50-year-old accountant. She was looking forward to a pleasant, if nondescript evening. Now she is happy to agree to at least a pleasant one. Tracy thought that her relationship with Joey was going in a positive direction, perhaps towards marriage. At the beginning of their relationship, love was amazing, Tracy thought, and her feelings for Joey continued to grow. However, about a year after the divorce, Tracy noticed that both love and emotional attachment to Joey had leveled off. She often wondered if the decrease in love attraction was due to the fact that love was no longer illegal. As for the emotional decline, Tracy often recalled her marriage to Roger. She missed the little things she shared with Roger. The light touches, the sweet little things he whispered to her after love and at breakfast. She and Joey often shared time living in each other's apartments, but they never became a couple. Tracy began to suspect that Joey was dating other girls. They did not discuss the issue of exclusivity, but Tracy suggested that this would happen after Roger filed for divorce. When the burning pain in her private parts confirmed that she had venereal disease, Tracy realized that her suspicions were confirmed. "You're a fucking bastard," Tracy shouted at Joey when she got the confirmation. "I gave up marrying a good man for you." Joey couldn't think of anything to say. He just grinned across the table. And Tracy understood everything. 2 years later, she was cured of the filth she had picked up a long time ago. Tracy stood up to greet her date and kissed Fred Myers chastely on the cheek. She noticed as she leaned in for a kiss that Fred was wearing the same aftershave, the same expensive aftershave that Roger loved so much. "I haven't thought about Roger for half a day," she chuckled to herself. How not to screw up. Joey definitely enjoyed using Roger Zikwat's wife. She was more beautiful than most of the wives of the other men he used, and she was a great lover. So many women just lay there like dead fish. Tracy wasn't one of them. She also seemed to enjoy illicit lovemaking. This excitement began to diminish when Roger filed for divorce from Tracy, Joey noticed, but her emotional dependence on him seemed to grow. At first, Joey enjoyed the intimacy, but then he began to perceive it as an even greater burden. After an exclusive relationship with Tracy for about 2 years, he got itchy again. Hell, to be more precise, other women started to attract him. He began to meet them on the sly from time to time, but since he always preferred making love without protection, he soon contracted syphilis. He didn't get a chance to tell Tracy about it before she found out for herself that he had passed on his illness to her. She was unhappy that she had contracted a sexually transmitted disease, as well as what it meant for their relationship. Joey didn't lose a minute of sleep over the loss of Tracy. It was a huge party in honor of Roger and Bunny's 25th wedding anniversary. Roger surprised his wife by renting a party room at their favorite restaurant and inviting friends and family there, including their 23-year-old son Daryl and 21-year-old daughter Abigail. Nothing surprised Roger more than that a favor to his former mother-in-law would lead to his remarriage. 5 years after Roger divorced Tracy, Mary asked him to help one of Tracy's bridesmaids, who was returning to the city after serving in the Air Force. Lunch turned into a relationship, but it wasn't until a couple of months later that Roger found out he was dating Tracy's younger cousin. He did not know that Bunny had divorced and now her last name was Donaldson, because before that she was a Stengel, like Marie's brother-in-law and sister. "You set me up, Mom," Roger smiled wryly when he met Marie after he found out about Bunny. "I met her only once and didn't know that she was part of the family." "It was a really good plan, Mom." Marie smiled broadly and grinned. Roger was embarrassed. "That wasn't the plan, Roger." "I swear," Marie said softly. "I just asked you for a favor. I never expected it to last longer than one lunch. I knew you weren't seeing many people after the divorce, but I never figured it out. I can't tell you how happy George and I are. You know we've always had a high opinion of you, and we love Bunny to death. We know you're going to do the right thing with this girl, just like you always did the right thing with Tracy when you were married." "Oh, Mom, you're in a bit of a hurry right now, aren't you?" "I don't think so, Roger," Mary replied. "You two look great together. She has your heart, doesn't she? You know me well, Mom. So, let's say it really happens. Who should I call Mom, you or your sister Grace? What about both of us? Grace may deserve this title, but it would hurt me incredibly if you called me something else after all these years." Marie was right, Roger admitted to himself. Bunny had his heart, and about 13 months after their first lunch, the couple tied the knot. No, Tracy wasn't invited, by mutual consent of Bunny and Roger. Mary and George only mentioned this neglect of their ex-wife and their daughter once, and it meant that they understood everything perfectly. A year later, Roger had his first child, and 2 years later, his second. After each birth, he thanked Bunny with expensive jewelry. "You're not trying to convince me to have 6 children like that, are you?" Bunny asked quietly, having received her next gift after the birth of the couple's daughter. Roger and Bunny were on the dance floor 2 hours after the party started. Her head was resting on Roger's shoulder, and she was safely tucked into his arms when Roger suddenly stopped moving and stared intently into the eyes of his partner of the last 25 years. He rummaged in his pocket and pulled out a small box that once held a diamond necklace. Roger took the necklace out of the sock drawer and looked at it for a long time before making a decision. 2 days later, he returned to the jewelry store where he had bought this necklace many years ago and exchanged it for a pair of diamond earrings. This time, He hoped more that he would have the opportunity to give it to his wife. Eventually, Tracy found a man she could grow old with. She was 52 years old when she married Franklin Jameson, a widower with 2 grown children. She admitted to herself that although Franklin wasn't anything special, at this point in her life, she probably wouldn't find anyone special and would be happy with someone who seemed to be a good person who loved her with all his heart. In her most poignant moments, Tracy admitted to herself that she had abandoned her special person because of her own selfishness and stupidity. She fell in love with Joey's beauty, his youth, and gave free rein to her own lust, mistaking it for love, like a stupid schoolgirl. Despite the fact that she had 11 good years with Roger, he didn't give her any slack once he found out she was cheating on him, and it didn't give her time to consider her options. Who is she kidding? She thought to herself. She was too fixated on the strong feelings she received from the illegal act of love to understand what she was actually risking. Her parents loved Roger like family and tried to get Tracy to see the truth about what she was doing. It took her more than 2 years to admit to herself that she thinks with an organ below the waist. Catching syphilis was an amazing experience for a woman who thought she was in control of the situation. Roger's marriage to her younger cousin Bunny was a blow to Tracy, especially when she found out that it was her mother who brought them together. "She's part of the family, Mom. How could you do this to me? Set her up with my ex. He left me. For God's sake," Tracy whimpered. "You deserve to be abandoned," Marie shouted at her daughter. "You cheated on him. I'd divorce your ass for that, too. Whose side are you on, Mom? You should be on mine. You're my mother." "No, I can't put up with cheating. I raised you better," Marie said softly. "Roger deserves a good woman, even if she's your cousin. Why didn't Bunny even invite me?" "She was one of my bridesmaids," Tracy said. "She respected Roger's wishes," Marie said. "I think everyone agreed that his feelings mean a lot more than yours." Considering that Roger, Bunny, and Tracy lived in the same city, their paths sometimes crossed. Roger was polite at best when he met Tracy. The cousins hardly did more than glare at each other. Eventually, Joey settled down and got married. His choice of women was no longer the same as before. An attack on him for the purpose of robbery when he was about 35 years old left him with a permanent limp, and his once dense muscular body was reborn into a loose one. His flirting seemed to have lost its effect on women as his physical form stopped matching him. Reflecting, Joey realized that he would no longer have that choice of pussies, because he was over 40. He chose an average woman with an average body who seemed to really love him. Even when he was cheating, women didn't seem as good as they had a few years ago. The police questioned Roger and Tracy after Joey was robbed. The detectives were convinced that the robbers took too much pleasure in hurting Joey rather than robbing him. As she had expected, no one questioned Marie Hewson about Joey's robbery. After all, why would the police suspect a sweet, gray-haired grandmother? Marie realized correctly. Although she blamed Tracy for her own mess, she knew that Joey was at least partially to blame for the breakdown of Roger and Tracy's marriage, so he deserved his share of the punishment. Although she hadn't told either Roger or Tracy about her intentions, she figured it might be something they both would agree to.